Well, good afternoon and welcome to this week's Points and Miles report here on Traveling on Everyday Spend. I hope everyone is doing well today. In my part of Ohio, digging out of 4 inches of snow from yesterday, which is probably small to a lot of you all, but to some of you all could be a whole lot. So all's well here, just sunny and cold. So once again, hope you all are doing well. Going to cover a few things today. We're obviously we're moving into that transition from 2025 to 2026, but we do still have some good information that we all need to be aware of. So let's go ahead and jump right on into it. Now, when it comes to the credit card offers that we have right now, we do have a few changes to the lineup. We do still have the Hilton credit cards with American Express. The Capital One did end. I still have the Venture One, Quicksilver, and Saver, but that ended on the 9th. So we still have the Venture X and the Venture X Business ones available. For Bank of America, it's still about the Alaska credit cards that still have the elevated offers for those. And then as far as Chase, a couple of minor changes. We do now have the Chase Freedom Unlimited with a elevated offer, which is really their highest in 9 months, $300 for $500 in spend in the first 3 months. Now that we do know that is going to end on January 15th. So if you're interested in that, it's obviously one of the foundational cards, foundational no annual fee cards to get related to Chase. So that is still there. And then we also have the Southwest credit cards that are going to be ending on the 16th to keep in mind for those. Also on the 16th was we have the Amtrak Guest Rewards Preferred Card, which will go back down, expected to go back down to its original 20,000 points or miles once we hit to December 16th, which was at 20,000 miles. So keep that in mind as well. Citi credit cards, we still have the same three, the Strata Elite, Strata, and the Globe with their elevated offers on those. Now, when it comes to the transfer bonuses, obviously, we're going to see them much more limited at this time of the year, but we do expect those to jump back up in January. Virgin Atlantic has 40% through December 31st with Amex. One of the things I would point out with that one in particular is that Virgin is running a promotion at a few limited hotels that I will touch on in a bit, that 40% transfer, if you are looking at one of those potential hotels, could bring your rate down to as low as 15,000 Virgin points for each per night stay at a couple of those locations. So we'll talk about those. Bonaire still has the 20% through December 31st, as well as Aeroplan for 30% through January 5th on Chase. Now, as far as the points and miles opportunities, a lot of different ones that we still have, a lot of new ones that we're having right now. You can purchase the Alaska Airlines. That's going to run through the 23rd. I still mention that as far as the up to 100% discount. We do also have Turkish with an up to 100% bonus, which will run through December 22nd. And you trigger that at 101,000 miles or points will be the 100% for that. United, that's going to be ending December 24th for up to 100% bonus. Still is not great or an ideal number because that is going to put you at 1.88 cents per mile. And it's obviously hard to get a lot of value out of that. But if you need to top off, that is going to be available at 100%. IHG extended their 100% bonus, which is normally what we see as their best offer, but it does come up a lot, which will bring you down to 0.5 cents per point, which is about what it's kind of valued at. So that's been a number for that. Now, as far as the Virgin Hotels, this is what I was mentioning as far as the potential to utilize that 40% on the Amex transfer if interested. So Virgin is having Virgin Hotel Reward Sale. And with that transfer bonus, you could be down as low as 15,000 points per night. Now, you do have to reserve by January 15th, and the checkout period is between January 31st and March 31st. Now, it is only at a few limited locations, so it's going to be at their Dallas location, Nashville location, New York City, New Orleans, and then London Shoreditch is where it's going to be located at. Copa Airlines, we have the up to 90% bonus. That's going to be ending December 21st. So you'll have to keep that in mind if you're looking for that. It's a really good airline as far as going down to Panama, as well as some potential ones here in the United States, but that is the main one it's noted for. Frontier, we have their up to 150% bonus. That matches the best that they've offered. And you do have until January 9th to purchase. You'll get 100% right off the bat at only 2,000 miles that you may purchase. And then at 10,000, you'll trigger the 150%. And at 1.08 cents per point, that is going to be under what most people value their miles at. Emirates is going to have an up to 25% bonus if you're purchasing by December 22nd. Still 2.44 cents per mile, not ideal, but once again, as we always talk about, it's about what your best redemption is going to be that you might end up making it worth your while. EVA Air, if you're not aware, is one of the 3 airlines that are based out of Taiwan, which includes Starlux, EVA Air, and China Airlines. EVA has up to a 35% bonus that if you purchase by December 31st, 35% still keeps it pretty high at 2.96 cents per mile. But once again, for top off purposes, might be something that you might work for you. And before we get to the quick notes, I see Chad Money Minutes. Appreciate you stopping in. That you no need to apologize. I have been horrible on getting onto everybody else's popping in for their live streams and checking out their videos. So I appreciate you taking a few moments. Really appreciate it. Chad, if you can catch him for his Money Minutes, where he just kind of pops out of nowhere sometimes, make sure you're subscribing to his channel. Really has some really good insight. Been in the game for a while, and I'm still planning. One of my big trips is going to be what he did as far as getting to the Middle East and getting to Egypt and working that trip. So I'm looking for that, as well as Dubai. So really a good person to listen to. So let's hit a couple of the quick notes, and then I'll want to touch on Mesa, unfortunately. So let's talk about the quick notes. So we have a new flagship coming to JFK for American Airlines. So they're going to have their new Airbus A321XLR is going to start flying out of there next week. Now, it's going to be utilized for the transcontinental flight to LAX. And this is going to have the new flagship business class seats. And that plane has 20 of those. So if you've been looking at those that particular feature for American Airlines, this would be the opportunity to be able to utilize it if you have transcontinental flights coming up. The next item is the J.D. Power Lounge ratings. Now, obviously, we always have to take ratings with a grain of salt, of course. Now, these rankings are based on data from September and October surveys and is on a 1,000-point scale. And so when they ranked, and this was not by location, this was by brand, and they did not include the premium brands such as United Polaris or the Flagship Lounge for American Airlines, those type of things, or Delta One. So the highest rated one was the Amex Centurion at 782 points. Capital One and Delta tied at 773 points. Chase was at 771. American Airlines 753. At Alaska 748. And United was 705 points. Now this was based on 1,430 travelers on 8 categories that they ended up evaluating. Now the one thing that I would end up saying is, when I say take this with a grain of salt, it's mainly because they did it for a 2-month period for less than 2,000 customers. Now, what is the biggest lounge availability, biggest group of lounges? Well, it's Amex with their Centurion lounges. So it's not surprising that they would be at the top because probably more people had access to them and were using them. I think it's where we start seeing the Capital One and Delta come in second. Delta, obviously, if you are flying Delta, which is obviously major, but Capital One, because while they're expanding, the quality of what they've been providing is where I take that. I think that if we were asking people what is the best lounges at most of these airports, whether it's Las Vegas As an example, you're probably going to hear Capital One over Amex in a lot of cases. So if you've been there, you know. If you haven't been there, I think that's where when you look at these points, you have to kind of factor a bit in. Now, when we get near the quote unquote bottom, United, for those, I've only been to United a couple of times for their lounges, and not quite as dynamic as some of these other ones. So it's not surprising. So I thought it was just an interesting rating system to be able to kind of see. But if you've been to these lounges, you have an idea that Amex Centurion Lounge being up there is probably more about availability, where they're flying, not necessarily the best of where they're flying. And want to make sure to say hello to Carlos. Appreciate you stopping in. Good morning to you as well. And to Ryan, thanks for stopping in. Cold one in Chicago. Yeah, here in Central Ohio, the high for today, I believe, is 18 with a wind chill of somewhere around 5 below zero. But hopefully you're going to get the quote unquote winter heat wave that we're supposed to get by the end of the week when we get back up to about 44 degrees. So hopefully you're going to see that in a couple of days there in Chicago. So wanted to get back, just kind of touch on that a little bit as far as that scoring. The next item would be the Delta free Wi-Fi. Now, it was announced earlier this week that their 1,000th plane is now set up, not wet up, from free Wi-Fi. Now, basically all of their domestic and long-haul flights are now equipped. So they say 3 and 4 jets have free Wi-Fi right now. They do have obviously not obviously, but they've identified connectivity issues if you're flying from the United States to Asia or Australia, where there have been hours where there's been no Wi-Fi. Hopefully they'll be able to fix that for that, because we haven't necessarily heard it from some of the other airlines that are getting us this free Wi-Fi from the Asian and the Middle Eastern ones. But I'll be curious if you've experienced that with some of the other airlines. And then let's talk about the Jamaica hotels. Now, we knew that they obviously had the hurricane that did extensive damage there in Jamaica. And basically the Hyatt hotels had suspended any activity going on there through January 31st. Well, we knew that was only going to be the first stage. Now they have said that 7 of the 8 Hyatt hotels in Jamaica will now not open until November 1st of 2026. So that is essentially a year that they're going to need. But the strange one that I thought was Zoetree in Montego Bay is actually set to reopen on February 1st. So I thought that was really interesting of how that one got spared. I don't know where it's located in relation to the other 7 locations, but if you are looking at Zoetree, you don't have much more of a delay. Now we have, as far as unlimited lounge access. Now, obviously, Ritz-Carlton card has been widely known for having unlimited guests to be able to go, especially to the Sapphire lounges, but as well as the Priority Pass. Once again, I've talked about these outlier cards kind of being on borrowed time. And unfortunately, the Ritz-Carlton one is nearing its end of that particular feature. So as of January 15th of next year, the unlimited lounge access will end. Card members and their authorized users, which is still a great benefit of being of an authorized user still having that access, will be allowed to bring 2 guests to the Chase Sapphire and the Priority Pass lounges. So you still get to bring 2, it's just not unlimited. And then it will be $27 for each additional guest. So it's to me, in the grand scheme of things, it's a pretty small reduction that you're taking on this. It's more symbolic to me than anything else, where this had to happen at some point. And now's as good a time as any for that to happen with the lounges there. So interesting on that. And Ryan was asking, did I get to the Mesa news? And that is actually what I'm going to do right now. Very disappointing situation with Mesa. And probably most people have already heard that Mesa basically shut everything down on Friday night. I think it might have been around 6, 7 o'clock. Now, there were some people in hindsight that ended up seeing that, seeing the email and were able to make some moves. I saw, unfortunately for me, it's in hindsight, where I was able to see that some people were able to still make some transfers of their points to the different transfer partners for about from what I looked at, maybe about a couple of hours. Then that seemed to roughly go away, and then it got down to the 6/10 of a cent per point for statement credit, and then people were able to do that. And then by about 11 p.m., maybe midnight Eastern Standard Time, everything was done. You couldn't access it at all. I unfortunately was busy and did not see any of this. And so I did not notice until early in the morning on Saturday morning, with this. And so I didn't cash anything out. I unfortunately had all my points in there that I had earned over the year. Now, we don't know what's supposed to happen ultimately. I'm obviously going with the view that it's gone. Maybe I think that I would hope that at least we're going to see that people can be able to cash out the points at the 6/10 of a cent for statement credit. Mainly because I think that may be a slight possibility, because they still obviously want you to pay your bill. I actually cannot even get into my account right now. And you don't have 24-hour service with Mesa. So they're going to have to either open up something, and this may not apply to other people. Maybe other people can get into their accounts, but I can't right now. So either they're going to have to do something to open things up for everybody, and they're going to have to address the points, or you're going to mail out these statements and try not to reopen anything so that nobody might be able to game anything. I assume that they're going to open things back up, and what they'll end up doing is they're taking this time to try to make sure that nobody can backdoor them. I saw that people were one of the suggestions I know I saw was that people were uninstalling the app in for that for a window, redoing it, shut down your cellular and your Wi-Fi so that it couldn't update and then get into it. Now, I couldn't do it by the time I was involved in it. So I wish there was an inkling. I didn't read of any inkling. I didn't see any inkling with this. I've had that card ever since it opened. Never had, the billing was fine. The point accumulation was fine. I never even had an issue where I debated the points I was getting per transaction. I knew exactly what I was getting for everything I did, whether it was home related or such. So that's really kind of the baffling part, that there wasn't something that kind of leaked out. We knew that I think they had done another round of funding in a few months ago, but there wasn't anything on the horizon. In fact, last week we talked about the fact that they had a new transfer partner, which had a very good chance of giving us some outsized value because of Omni's program, not specific to Mesa. So that's obviously disconcerting about that, not seeing this on the horizon. The other thing that I think it gives, well, I'm trying to organize this. I should have probably wrote some things down. So now it's a matter of looking. Now I've complained enough about that situation. I'm very disappointed and upset. So now, probably for you, if you didn't get to cash out, I have to look at what happened with me. And I see that Ryan said, people said transactions were starting to decline leading up to this. I have to be honest, Ryan, I did not have any. In fact, my wife used the card that afternoon going to the grocery store, and it didn't get declined. And that would have been around 1, 2 in the afternoon, my time, which is Eastern Standard Time. So I didn't get the benefit of that to even see something was wrong. The only thing that I saw in my 1 year of having the card that always was kind of something that bothered me, but I didn't see enough of it to bother me enough, was the fact that the customer service aspect, the response time via email, because I did everything via email, I never called them. because the email responses were very quick and they were thorough. That had diminished since probably in the first 6 months it was good, excuse me, and then it declined for the very few times that I even needed to do it. But I didn't view anything with it because, once again, we were seeing more growth with their transfer partners. We weren't seeing them stunt anything. We didn't see them take anything or reduce any of the multipliers away. I really thought that there was going to be people that were going to really go to town on them when it came to the childcare. I mean, 3x on childcare. There wasn't anything like it, and but maybe I overestimated that. So the two things I take from this, and I see Sleepy Rod jumped in, Mesa class came out of nowhere. Now I have to question Bilt and how they're doing. That is one of the two things I'm going to talk about or mention. The first thing I have to look at myself is the whole thing with Mesa obviously was a horrible thing, and the way they did it was terrible. But now I have to look at is there anything I could have done better? And there is. I had accumulated about 70,000 points on Mesa, and I didn't necessarily have a plan of what I needed to do with it until about a month ago. I had decided that I was going to most likely use the Mesa points, transfer them to Accor Live Limitless, and use that to stay at the Fairmont over at the Vancouver airport for my flight to Asia in February. But then last week, I was just talking about the fact that I was trying to compare those points with doing transferring them or doing through their portal. And I got busy with life. So I should have made a decision on that much quicker. And as soon as I knew I was going and to get more ahead of it, I should have transferred points. That's just the reality. I got lulled into feeling comfortable with it, where I haven't had a situation like this before, where you have this entity come out of nowhere that you've kind of invested or put your points into, and just never felt like I had a rush. So in hindsight, when this comes back, not Mesa, I'm not saying that. If I ever got involved with another kind of fintech or kind of offshoot, I would be much more careful about my points, which now leads me to Bilt. I do believe there's the cardless thing obviously is of some slight concern, even though they run a lot of other credit cards. I would definitely not be leaving my points in the new Bilt long, if at all possible. The bigger concern that I have is the advantage that I thought Mesa had that made them more sustainable than Bilt was that $1,000 requirement to even trigger the mortgage points. And I thought that the second part was that they didn't require you to run it through a card. They just linked it. So they didn't really incur an expense, but gave you a benefit. And yet they still got at least $1,000 spend on the card to trigger the mortgage. I thought those two things was kind of that kind of addressed the problem that Bilt had with Wells Fargo. Obviously, that wasn't necessarily the case. So what ended up happening? Well, we don't know the answer yet. I think that I kind of lean towards two things. One that makes sense for sure. Well, I won't say one thing that makes pretty good sense, and the other one that just feels like it's part of the problem, but I don't know. The first item is they started off with transfer partners that were very limited. Hainan Airlines and some other ones that were Vietnam Airlines, ones that were not ones that probably even got them anybody spending their points and didn't cost them anything or very limited. Then they scaled up very fast to more mainstream transfer partners. And I think that they might have incurred some point issues there of paying for those points. That makes some sense of what might have happened, but I'll be curious of what you all think. The second part is where I'm not totally sure, but makes some sense to me, is that from a dollars and cents point, I thought the $1,000 was going to kind of cover that difference that Bilt was not getting with their 5 minimum transactions. What I think might have been a problem, though, is the credit limit that they provided, and that maybe some people were not paying their bill. For most established credit card companies, they love you not paying your full bill. They charge the interest, and they'll make the money eventually as they accumulate the number. But if you're a startup like this, once again, this is where I don't know for sure. To me, that if that ended up happening, that would not be something that would be positive at a certain point for a startup, where you're not getting your money in. You're charging your interest, but if the money's not coming in, then that could be a problem. And I think that the other part of it was that card was one of the highest credit limits of any card in my household. It was $20,000. Compare that to Bilt, which was 5,000. So Bilt to me kept, and this may not have applied to everybody, but although I saw a lot of people talk about these limits for Bilt in Mesa that I'm talking about, Bilt was able to kind of manage their downside when it came to those credit limits. And we've all been talking about, will we see higher ones with cardless? Maybe they kind of left themselves a bit more exposed with higher credit limits. Now, I only spent maybe $1,300 a month on that card to trigger the mortgage, but that's kind of my view on it. I hope that you all didn't take losses like I did as far as the points for that. But let me see what you all are thinking for this. Sleepy Rod said, in hindsight, yeah, it seemed too good. You didn't have to pay your mortgage with your card, but you needed to spend 1,000 while you could do on 3X categories. They were printing points. Yeah, I think that is definitely one to consider. And what's the point? Appreciate you stopping in. Another person that does really good content. Make sure you check out his channel. Really good insight on a lot of different cards and information. So appreciate you stopping in. We can only hope Bilt is more established. The move to cardless has me very concerned, though. Yeah, I think that when it comes to that one, I thought the whole talk of Bilt having the no annual fee card and then the mid-tier card and then the high premium, I think it has to be different than what we originally got pitched when they were talking about the surveys. I just do not see how the no annual fee card can give you the 1 point per dollar. I just don't see it. Unless they were going to have a minimum spend like Mesa did. I just don't, because you can't make up the difference. They can't make that one a 5 transaction card because that's what lost them money accordingly. The $95 a year, I don't think is enough. Similar to what we saw with Mesa. $1,000 a month made some sense. $95 per year is not enough money to generate to cover the losses we saw with Wells Fargo. So now the premium card, you have to give something for it. So I don't expect that we'll see there, but I think there has to be a tiered system for Bilt with cardless to even make it make sense. So I agree. I'm concerned about it, and I will definitely treat Bilt points. If they get the mortgage thing going, I'll definitely be in it immediately. But I will definitely, before I get the card, is really have a plan of where I'm transferring those points to. We also need to see, are we going to have the same transfer partners with that? Wells Fargo was able to swing Alaska and Hyatt with them. Does cardless have that same pull to be able to do something like that? I am fearful that they don't. There's just too much value there that Bilt was putting money into. I just don't see it with cardless. So the on the surface thing of saying, oh, you're going to be able to get points with each of those 3 cards. There's going to be a lot of small print and some that are not small print that's going to say that I don't think we can. I just don't think it's going to work out in that particular way. But I'm hoping that they're at least upfront and honest with whatever penalties, so to speak, that is going to be put on us to trigger those mortgage points, because we don't want to see another one fail. If Bilt fails with the mortgage deal, it's going to be a long time before we see anything that even comes close to Mesa or Bilt do homeowners cards. But if Bilt can trigger the right thing, I think then we might see this come from more of the major players to have something if they believe there's money to be made and not to be lost. And I see what's the point. Sleepy Rod said, people on the Frequent Miler Facebook group were joking months ago that Mesa sounds too good to be true, and then something had to give. You know what? I don't blame them. I mean, clearly they're right. I just thought that they covered enough of their downside. When you see how long, obviously, Wells Fargo was losing millions, and obviously Mesa was not in a position to lose that kind of money, and they obviously have overexposed themselves in some place. It's going to be interesting to see where it's overexposed to, and is Bilt willing to bite the bullet, even if they have to change what they've told people to say, hey, we said all these three cards are going to be able to do points with no fee or whatever, that they just put out the most fiscally responsible policy that, while we might moan and complain, but if we can get it to work and work long term, I'm all for it. However it is, because once again, it's either Bilt or nothing. And I'd rather have something with these mortgage dollars that we're spending, and obviously people that are spending with rent. So that's the hope for that. And so that's my thought of Mesa. It's very unfortunate. And I saw a couple of people on the different Reddits talking about that they lost 100, 200,000 points with Mesa. Although like I said, I saw some people were able to get it out of there. So if you had the Mesa card, I hope you were able to get the points out in some way, shape, or fashion, or that you were ahead of the game doing it before and didn't lose them. So, but I wanted to share my thoughts on Mesa. Obviously, I've done videos on that card, and just very disappointing of how it all played out. So let's cover a couple of last items here to share with you all. So let's talk about, Alaska Airlines obviously has been really investing in the international travel coming out of Seattle as their new international hub. And we now have the latest one that we're seeing, and that is being able to fly Alaska Airlines to London. And for this one, as I mentioned, they're really pushing this. Now, they just recently did the nonstop flight to Rome, had recently opened for bookings. Now, London nonstop is open, and so the first flights for that is going to be May 21st. Now, it's the most anticipated route, and it's going to operate year-round, which is good. Rome kind of stayed in the warmer months compared to London, which is not surprising because of London being such a financial hub and a lot of activity. Now, these are going to be flying the new 787-9 Dreamliners over there. So you're not dealing with, if you've flown Alaska before, it's clearly not the 737s that you fly domestically. These are basically like the ones for Hawaiian Airlines. And this airline, or these this allotment that they've got, was part of a Hawaiian airline order that was recently received, but they're going to put it under the Alaska Airline nameplate. These flights are going to be flying from Seattle to London Heathrow, 9:45 p.m. to get there at 3:05 p.m. the next day, and then back from Heathrow to Seattle, 5 p.m. to 6:50. Now, the economy flights are starting at 30,000 points one way, so that's a good redemption. Unfortunately, we're not seeing the business flight numbers come down at all yet. Right now, we're seeing it's 150,000 points in the summer. So we're probably going to be a long ways out. And I say long ways, meaning like we're probably not going to see any reduction in some of those points that we can at least get in as unicorns or surprises probably for at least 4 to 6 months before then, flying into the winter maybe of December. Maybe we'll start seeing some reduction in those business points to more reasonable ones that can become a sweet spot, but we're probably a ways away from that. But I'm still looking forward to anything that Alaska is still being able to do with expansion for that, because you can still get these miles much easier than we used to. You can do it if you're connected with Bilt rewards. Well, we'll see how that part goes, because with the ascent and the summit, you can get 3 Alaska miles per dollar if you're doing it for your rent. You do have to incur the fee though of 3%. So you have to determine if there's some outsized value there. And with the Summit card, getting that companion pass to be able to use. So I want to see as much come out of that as possible for us to get maximum value out of it. And then the JetBlue BlueHouse Lounge. Now, we talked about this about a week or so ago, where the JFK location was going to be opening before the end of the year. Boston was going to be mid-year. And what we knew was that the location at JFK was going to be a smaller type location. We now have more information about that lounge right now. It is now going to open up next week on the 18th. So that fast approached. And it's going to open, but it's also going to launch the brand name for JetBlue's lounges, and it's going to be BlueHouse Lounge. And what they're saying, and from some of the images, if you pull them up from that, it's supposed to be more of a New York City apartment style feel. Now, it's going to be located in Terminal 5 near Gate 527. It is only 9,000 square feet, but it is spread out on 2 floors. And the space is accommodating 140 people on there. Now, this is by design for JetBlue, because they're saying that they are wanting to create an exclusive space for its top customers. And that's what they're working with. So it's not going to be a massive outpost. Now, will Boston be more of this kind of boutique type of style? I think we're going to find out pretty quickly, depending upon the feedback from the regular JetBlue flyers, not the highest tier ones, because they're going to have access anyway. So as far as what the place looks like, it's on 2 floors. The front desk is like a apartment mailroom that you would see not just in New York, but in a lot of major places where you have one central place for your mailboxes. And each of those mailboxes will contain small gifts for members, which I think is a nice touch. Now, there are going to be 2 bars. One bar will be on the first floor, second bar upstairs. Now, the bar on the first floor will have beer, wine, as well as liquor. And so they'll have bartenders from the greats of craft there, and the baristas are going to be providing Joe Coffee, which was founded out of Greenwich Village. You'll also have a library and a game room. And when I say game room, it'll have a TV screen monitor, as well as some JetBlue branded card and game board games, not anything like foosball or pool or anything like that. On the second floor, they'll have that second bar, and it's going to serve beer and wine. Now, they're having a break room style kind of area, which is a grab and go space for coffee, soft drinks, and sandwiches. Now, as far as access for this, it's going to be limited to Mosaic 4 members, passengers flying to Europe in Mint. So if you're flying transcontinental in Mint, this does not get it for you. And then premier card holders, which we've talked about a lot on this channel with their offers. That's about a $500 credit card for them, where it gives you access to the JetBlue lounges. Now, when it comes to guest access, they are trying to limit that, of course, when you're only going to have 140 people there. Now, you'll get 1 free guest to come in with you if you're a Mosaic 4 member or a premier card holder. And if you're one of the people flying in Mint from Europe or into Europe, well, from Europe, then you're going to have 30 or to Europe. It'll be $39 for each guest. So the second person and thereafter, if you're Mosaic 4 and Premier, you'll pay $39. And if you want to bring a guest and you're flying Mint to Europe, it's going to be that $39. So that's what we have for that. So I think that this style, depending on how many of these lounges they have, I think that this one could their plan could be successful now that we're seeing it. If you're a JetBlue regular flyer, even if you're not a big time person that is flying constantly, then this probably could be worth getting that premier credit card. Now you'll have to obviously do the calculation of how many times do you have to fly out of JFK to make it worth it for you. That'll be the question. But I think that having this number and this kind of setup gives it its best chance of being people getting that card. There's two things that we have that do need to be kept in mind, though. One is that excuse me. One thing you have to the first thing is there is no buffet. There is that you commonly see at most lounges. This is truly just a grab and go from the food side. You can sit and drink, but you're not going to be getting meals, or you're not going to be able to make yourself a sandwich or a bowl for that. That is once again, 9,000 square feet, you are limited. So it'll be interesting to see how many people take to that part. The second thing is that we talked about their blue sky relationship with United, with JetBlue. There is no reciprocity when it comes to lounges. So even if you have high tier United status, you will not have access to the lounges with JetBlue. Now, will that change down the line? Probably not, because once again, you're limited with 140 people for that. And unless you're going to have massive outposts, you cannot end up doing it. And if they didn't get it up front, I don't foresee United, even high tier people getting in. So I think that was interesting that those are two of the food part might be a negative for some, but there's so much other things to be able to do at JFK that I don't think it hurts it. But you'll have to let me know what your thoughts are on it, especially if you're a person that flies JetBlue. The next item would end up being Cathay Pacific. Now, this was a rewards promo that it's not the easiest to get, and it's not a lot of points, but there are people that fly Cathay Pacific, so I wanted to make sure to at least get this out for you. This is to get up to 5,700 Cathay points. Registration is required. I'll have a link for that in the description. Now, this promotion ends pretty quick, January 31st of 2026. Now, there's 6 missions that you have to complete to get all 5,700 points, but you can get partial. So if you complete a mission, you'll get those points. So there's a few points that are easy to get, even if you're not going to be flying Cathay Pacific and you just want to scoop up a few points. So mission 1 is to make 1 miles transaction for 500 miles. The simplest thing would be using their Cathay shopping to get that. There's not a minimum purchase that you need to do, so 500 miles for that. Number 2 is to complete miles transaction for 2 or more categories. You could be doing that in flight, shopping, food, hotels. So not a whole lot of points, but 1,000 points is 1,000 points if you're already doing it. Mission 3 is where mission 3 and 4 are the more difficult ones, unless you are flying and dealing with Cathay Pacific. Mission 3 is to earn 20,000 miles with their program, and you'll receive 2,000 bonus miles. Mission 4 is to redeem at least 15,000 miles and receive 2,000 bonus miles. And mission 5, which gets back to an easy one for us, is to complete the check-in of the mission on the app, and that opens up on December 18th, and you'll pick up 100 bonus miles. And then last but not least is to subscribe to all Cathay communications and earn 100 bonus miles. Now, I can see for if I'm doing this, mission 6 seems simple enough, but I know, and you probably know as well, of how much it is to be dealing with getting a bunch of communications from someone on this. So probably not as likely, but that's what we have for Cathay Pacific. And let's talk about Hyatt points being used for African safaris. Now, last year, it was all about glamping. We knew that Hyatt was involved, Hilton was involved, Marriott was involved, as far as the whole glamping, which is basically camping with a little bit of luxury. And we've seen that at some major national parks. We've seen that in state, like here in Ohio, one of the different, couple of the different locations are in our state parks for some cabins and such. So we've seen that Hyatt's really done a lot of promotion about theirs for that. So that was kind of the rave last year. Well, the rave this year is starting to seemingly be about safaris. We've seen Marriott get involved in it. I believe Hilton is, and now we're seeing Hyatt kind of get step into it as well. And normally a bit of luxury on these African safaris. Even Choice actually has a location coming. I think we talked about it maybe a couple of weeks ago there in Africa. So Hyatt is joining, but it's not going to be under their brand. They're going to utilize their partnership with Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And we've talked about Mr. and Mrs. Smith is the boutique version of independent hotels and such that are kind of marketed out from there. So that is their partnership that they have with that. Now that's going to give them, make sure I say hello to No More Mr. Nice Guy. For Merry Christmas to you as well. Appreciate you popping in, sir. Thanks so much. So as far as them, they're going to have 15 Asila luxury African safari locations. Now these three portions in locations in Africa are not normally the mainstream ones that we've seen, because the ones for Hilton and Marriott have kind of been around a couple of reserves where we've seen multiple locations. This one is much more widespread. 3 of them will be in Kenya, or 3 are in Kenya, 11 in Tanzania, and then 1 in Uganda. Now, each camp offers electricity, but most do not offer air conditioning, which I thought was a bit interesting. Now, when you're booking through World of Hyatt, you will get an ensuite bathroom. You'll get alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks included. You'll get full meals that'll be included, shared game drives, and transfers between the camp and the nearest airstrip. Now, that all sounds good. The problem is in the points versus dollars. So if you take the Rakero camp in Kenya in December of 2026, that cost for 3-night stay is $5,568. Not overly surprising, but the amount of points to stay there, 562,500 points, which is off the chart when it comes to Hyatt, because that is less than 1 cent per point. And for all of us that deal with Hyatt for so much, and including myself, that is very disappointing from a point standpoint. As far as spending points, we look to get outsized value, and there is no way we're going to get it with the safaris. Now, if you're willing to spend the cash, though, you can earn some points, which is a positive. So earning points is 5 points per dollar, plus the elite bonus points. And if you use your World of Hyatt credit card, you'll get an additional 4 points per dollar. So that can generate some numbers. The problem that is also there that you have to keep in mind is their cancellation policy. If you cancel after the 1 hour mark of canceling, you're going to lose 20% of what you put into it. If it is 60 days out or more, it's 50% of what you have into it. And then if it's within 30 days, not a week or not 2 weeks, but if it's within 30 days, you're going to lose the entire money that you put into it. So if you're doing this, and obviously you're talking about this is a pretty big excursion, this is not going to be for the faint of heart if you really are concerned about losing money because of those cancellation policies. So I think that's a downside to it. I know they have to try to protect themselves somewhat, but I think that's going to be too stringent to really get the attention and activity that they're going to want to see from World of Hyatt people. So, but curious of what your thoughts are on that. But those are the things that kind of that we have for right now for in points and miles that are going on. And as we go into and continue into the Christmas season, Definitely make sure I'm going to make sure to try to get more communications out of some different posts in there. Need to be better with that. Want to make sure to check in with you all, and especially with my members. For them, really appreciate the advisory board that are members of the channel. And if you're considering it, I'll have a link in the description. And once again, if it's something that fits for you, great. Really appreciate having you there. But if it's not, you can cancel at any time. Normally get a stream in with for them, as well as the videos get out a bit earlier. And then I try to get them some little tidbits that come up in the before these live streams to just kind of keep them aware of what's going on. So I want to make sure if anybody's got anything that we need to talk about for the good of the order that may have been missed. Definitely appreciate you all taking the time to be with me this afternoon for me in this cold weather, and as from Chicago as well. But if not, thank you all so much for taking the time. Really appreciate talking with you all. And I will be talking with you very soon. You all have a great day.